everyone, hope you're doing great. We are reading the Federalist Papers. We're still in James Madison's essay. Let's begin. We're on page 40. I have thought it proper to quote at length these interesting passages because they contain a luminous abridgment of the principal arguments in favor of the Union, and must effectually remove the false impressions which a misapplication of other parts of the work was calculated to produce. They have at the same time an intimate connection with the more immediate design of this paper, which is to illustrate the tendency of the Union to repress domestic faction and insurrection. So look at that. So the Union having the ability to hold down faction uprisings and insurrection movements. We're having an insurrection right now in Portland. And we see how fractured we are as a nation. A distinction, more subtle than accurate, has been raised between a confederacy and a consolidation of the states. The essential characteristic of the first is said to be the restriction of its authority to the members in their collective capacities. So the the confederacy. That's interesting, the way in which he worded it. Without reaching to the individuals of whom they are composed. It is contended that the National Council ought to have no concern with any object of internal administration. Wow, so the National Council not really taking part in internal administration methods. That sounds, I don't know, you have to be careful, right? An exact equality of suffrage between the members has also been insisted upon as leading feature of a confederate government. These positions are in the main arbitrary. They are supported neither by principle nor precedent. It has indeed happened that governments of this kind have generally operated in the manner which the distinction, taken notice of, supposes to be inherent in their nature. So governments who don't rule by principle or precedent. But there have been in most of them extensive exceptions to the practice, which serve to prove, as far as an example will go, that there is no absolute rule on the subject. And it will be clearly shown, in the course of this investigation, that as far as the principle contended for has prevailed, it has been the cause of incurable disorder and imbecility in the government. Interesting, look at that. A national council not having concern with internal administration. The definition of a confederate republic seems simply to be an assemblage of societies. Okay, a confederate republic. Confederate republic. An assemblage of societies. Interesting. Or an association of two or more states into one state. The extent, modifications, and objects of the federal authority are mere matters of discretion, so long as the separate organization of the members be not abolished. Okay, so you cannot abolish their individual organizations. Okay, so long as it exists by a constitutional necessity for local purposes, though it should be in perfect subordination to the general authority of the Union. Be in perfect subordination to the Union. Look at that. Now, you have a lot of states battling the federal government in concerns of how they're allowing the rioting. It would still be, in fact and in theory, an association of states or a confederacy. The proposed constitution, so far from implying an abolition of the state governments, makes them constitute parts of the national sovereignty, by allowing them a direct representation in the Senate, and leaves in their possession certain exclusive and very important portions of sovereign power. So, representation in the Senate, exclusive portions of sovereign power. This fully corresponds in every rational import of the terms with the idea of a federal government. Yeah, pretty much, just to a certain degree. In the Lycian Confederacy, which consisted of 23 cities, or republics, the largest were entitled to 3 votes in the Common Council. Okay, so the Lycian Confederacy, huh? Those of the middle class 2, and the smallest to 1, the Common Council had the appointment of all judges and magistrates of the respective cities. This was certainly the most delicate species of interference in their internal administration. So, interference, huh? Common Council. So, larger cities getting 3 votes. For if there be anything that seems exclusively appropriated to the local jurisdiction, it is the appointment of their own officers. Yet Montesquieu, speaking of this association, says, "Were I to give a model of excellent confederate republic, it would be that of Lycia." Thus we perceive that the distinctions insisted upon were not within the contemplation of this enlightened civilian, and we shall be led to conclude that they are the novel refinements of an erroneous theory. Novel refinements of an erroneous theory. Novel refinements. That's a witty little insult, right? The union to repress domestic factions. And, you especially got people want the military to be sent in to silence out them rioters. And then you have governors saying, where does the federal have the authority to do that? So you see a lot of that going on today. Okay, this is James Madison, other essay number 10, called The Same Subject Continued. Very fancy title. Among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, so advantages coming from a well-constructed union, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. So look at that, to break and control. The friend of popular governments never finds himself so much alarmed for their character and fate as when he contemplates their propensity to this dangerous vice. So look, he's contending that faction insurrections are definitely a vice to the health of a nation. He will not fail, therefore, to set a due value on any plan which, without violating the principles to which he is attached, provides a proper cure for it. The instability, injustice, and confusion introduced into the public councils have, in truth, been the mortal disease under which popular governments have everywhere perished. So diseases, I like how he uses that example. Diseases causing a nation to perish, as they continue to be the favorite and fruitful topics from which the adversaries to liberty derive their most specious declamations. The valuable improvements made by the American constitutions on the popular models, both ancient and modern, cannot certainly be too much admired, but it would be an unwarrantable partiality to contend that they have as effectually obviated the danger on this side, as was wished and expected. Complaints are everywhere heard from our most considerate and virtuous citizens. Look at that. Complaints are heard everywhere from the citizens. Kind of like today, you're starting to get some real pushbacks from law-abiding citizens on how we live in sort of clown world where criminals are getting really lenient sentencing now. Equally the friend of public and private faith and of public and personal liberty. Look at that. Public liberty and personal liberty. That our governments are too unstable, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties. Look at that, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties. A lot of people say that now with the virus aid packages, right? The parties are fighting each other. Both of them, though, are giving too much to corporations instead of direct payment to the citizens, who will definitely spend and keep the economy afloat, right? More circulate the capital, as Smith would put it. And the rival parties, right? You have Antifa, the far left extremists, and the progressives, and then the corporate Dems, and establishment Dems, and the globalists, all fighting within one side, creating so much chaos. In the right wing, you mostly have Tea Party, the alt-right, classical Republicans, classical liberals, paleoconservatives, did I already say libertarians? And others who are definitely in rivals, but on the left at the moment there is the most conflicts. And you have to wonder, at what point does the factions disable what we're supposed to be doing with the government, which is improving people's lives? So, like the public good, you have to think, they say vote, vote, vote. But what people want right now is healthcare and education reform and prison reform. And we're not really going to get much on that. So the parties are just fighting each other instead of looking at how they can bridge the divide and make things better for modern day Americans. Wow, quite interesting, is it not? And that measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minor party, but by the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. Yeah, I can get that. But even when Democrats had power, they didn't do nothing. And Republicans, when they get in power, they don't do nothing. They don't actively do things for their party. They do reactionary things and blocking each other's bills and filibustering.